So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Uh, Today's session will be focusing on chapter 5 of Animal Farm. In the first four chapters, we saw how revolution happens in Animal Farm and how the name of Manor Farm changed to Animal Farm. Especially in chapter 4, we saw the Battle of the Cowshed, where Mr. Jones and his men who came to the farm in order to recapture it were again chased away by the animals. At the end of the battle, Animal Hero First Class was given to Snobble, and Animal Hero Second Class was given to a sheep who died in that battle. Now, chapter 5 begins by saying that Molly became more and more troublesome. She was late for work and she excused herself, saying that she had either overslept or she complained of mysterious pains. And she finds one or the other excuses in order to, uh, run away from work. And she used to go to the drinking pool where she would gaze at her own reflection in the water. So there were rumors that she was seen talking to men of Pilkington and men from the Foxwood farm. And one day, Clover spotted her talking to one of Pilkington's men. But Molly said she didn't meet anyone. Later, Clover searches Molly's stall and she finds a stash of sugar cubes and ribbons. 3 days later, Molly disappears from the farms, and the pigeons they report that they had seen her on the other side of Willington, and she was there wearing a ribbon and was attached to a cart near a local pub. So, after this incident, none of the animals ever mentioned Molly again. Now, regarding Molly, I hope you remember this particular question that was asked by Molly when the animals were preparing themselves for the revolution. Will there still be sugar after the rebellion? So Molly is not at all concerned about the revolution or the life of the animals. Her concern is nothing but ribbons and sugars. So Molly represents the bourgeois middle class who are not at all concerned about the lives of the working class people, not at all concerned about the revolution that is happening around them. So remember this, Molly is an allegorical representation of the bourgeois middle class. Molly is presented as very pretty, very materialistic, vain, and she flees to the humans. She was with the humans. So this is about Molly. Don't forget Molly. Now, then we see that on the farm, the animals they have given the pigs all authority to make all the decisions. So, although these decisions still have to be approved by a majority vote. So, whatever conflicts are there, whatever decisions are to be taken, it was generally made by the two pigs, Snowball and Napoleon, who never agreed with anything. So, Snowball, being a very visionary kind of a person, Snowball introduces many plans for the improvement of animal farm and he forms a number of committees. Hope you remember all those committees that Snowball formed, though it was a failure. And Snowball's power comes from the popularity of his speeches during his meetings. So the conflict between the two pigs, it becomes to a peak when Snowball introduces his plan to build a windmill on the farm. The windmill could help the animals with their labor by running machinery and providing electricity for the farm. So Snowball sketches out a complete design for his plan of the windmill, and there were many apparent benefits for this particular farm too. And the conflict between Snowball and Napoleon regarding this project windmill leads to a war between Snowball's plan to build a windmill and Napoleon's proposal to continue in their present manner. So, before the war, Snowball makes a detailed speech in favor of the windmill, outlining its major benefits. But Napoleon is very less persuasive with his words. Instead, he unleashes his 9 dogs, the puppies, which he took from Jessie and Bluebell to raise and educate. And these dogs, they chase Snowball away from Annabelle Farm. So this is something that happens in chapter 5, and it is very, very important. How the man who proposed the project windmill was chased out of Animal Farm. So expulsion of Snowball. So soon after the expulsion of Snowball, Napoleon became the sole leader, the totalitarian leader, and he banishes all the Sunday meetings, and he said there would be only flag hoisting and singing of beats of England. The animals would assemble on Sundays just in order to receive orders from Napoleon. And he also formed a special committee of pigs with him as the leader, so that all the decisions will be taken by the pigs, and that will be then later conveyed to the other animals. And Squealer was presented as the propaganda minister. Squealer, we see that, says to the animals that Napoleon had this idea of windmill in his mind. But the only reason why he opposed Snowball was that Snowball was a cheater. So that was the only reason why Napoleon opposed the idea of windmill which was proposed by Snowball. He and The animals were in utter confusion actually. And again, when they asked why, Snowball said, "Tactics, comrades, tactics." The animals, they were not actually sure of the meaning of the word tactics, but Squealer spoke so persuasively, and the dogs also, they were there with that growling sound so threateningly, that all the other animals, they accepted whatever is said by Squealer and Napoleon without further questions. So again, we see that while Snowball is presented as a very persuasive talker who has this gift of gab, Napoleon doesn't, have such a capacity. So he uses these dogs and also the sheep. Napoleon, teaches the sheep this slogan: four legs good, two legs bad. So whenever there is a debate happening between Napoleon and Snowball, the sheep, they come up with this bleating: four legs good, two legs bad, and they completely distract the masses. They completely, distract the entire discussion. So the sheep, they are representative of the ignorant masses. They are the ignorant mass who show blind loyalty to rebellion and also to communism. They blindly follow whatever is said by the government. They never question the government. And they shout down those who try to speak or ask questions. And this is the slogan with which they used to shout down others if a question is there from any of the other animals. So these sheep are presented as very ignorant, and they have given themselves completely to enslavement, that they support very blindly whatever is said by Napoleon. So the blind, the ignorant masses, that is the allegorical representation of the sheep. So Snowball, sorry, Snowball was expelled out of Animal Farm, and uh, 3 weeks after the expulsion, Napoleon announces the windmill project to be proceeded. And again, during this particular chapter, we see that Boxer takes this particular slogan as his, that Napoleon is always right. We know that earlier Boxer had his motto, I will work harder. So, along with the motto, I will work harder, Boxer takes this particular motto also, that Napoleon is always right. So, here in this particular chapter, there is the emergence of another particular character, another pig, who was there with Napoleon and Snowball together. That is Squealer. Squealer is presented as the propaganda minister of Napoleon, very persuasive. He convinces the animals, whatever it is, and it was in the very first chapter. It was said that he has this power to turn black into white. So Squealer repeatedly lies to the animals, and Squealer is allegorical of Pravda. Pravda is Stalin's propaganda newspaper, which convinced the Russian people that what the Soviet dictators were doing was for their benefit. Same is what Squealer does in Animal Farm. Whatever actions are taken by Napoleon, he convinces the other animals that it is for their good. Or he asks them the questions, this particular question that, do you want Mr. Jones to be back? So the animals say no. So Squealer is allegorical representation of Pravda. Yeah, Squealer and the propaganda department of Stalin's government. This propaganda department worked for Stalin to support his image. It used any lie to convince the people to follow Stalin, benefited from the fact that education was controlled. So Squealer, in the same way, convinces animals to believe and follow Napoleon. He changes and he manipulates the commandments, which we'll see in the coming chapters, how the seven commandments are very cunningly manipulated by Squealer. Now this is the present situation in Animal Farm. Earlier they said all animals are equal, but now all animals are not equal. Some are more equal than others. So this is the hierarchy in Animal Farm now. Napoleon on the top as a dictator who has complete control of the farm, who abolishes meetings, who abolishes whatever is there against him. After Napoleon comes the pigs. The pigs, they represent the government. They are intelligent. They organize the running of the farm. Then comes the dogs. The dogs, they are with Napoleon and they represent the police and the army. Then the last, the other animals who are the workers, the laborers who keep the who keep the farm running. So this is the hierarchy with which Animal Farm works now. So in this particular chapter, we see two different conflicts. The first conflict is regarding Molly, uh, the horse. Then second is that of Snowball. Molly wanted to live a life with the humans. She abandons the animal farm and the rebellion also. That is the outcome of that particular conflict with Molly. Then comes the second conflict, that is between Snowball and Napoleon, where Napoleon disagrees to Snowball's plan for the windmill, and the outcome is Napoleon thinks on the major problem of the farm is increasing food production, and he urinates on Snowball's plants. This is something that happens in chapter 5. So at the end of chapter 5, we see that Napoleon insists that the animal should build the windmill. He sends Squealer to convince the animals that windmill was his idea, and as Squealer says, tactics was this particular idea was used by Napoleon in order to get rid of Snowball, who was a dangerous character and a bad influence on other animals. Now, regarding the allegorical representation or Animal Farm as an allegory on Russian Revolution, we are familiar with these people: Tsar Nicholas II, Lenin, Stalin, and Trotsky. And we know what happened with the Tsars, how the Bolsheviks, under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, came to power. And after the death of Lenin in 1924, there was a struggle for power among his followers, especially between Leon Trotsky, the hero of the revolution, and Joseph Stalin, head of the Communist Party. So Trotsky wanted revolution to go worldwide, but Stalin wanted to concentrate on developing Russia's strength. So there was a battle between Trotsky and Stalin regarding the leadership after Lenin's death. So Stalin won the battle and Trotsky was exiled. Trotsky was always accused of plotting against Stalin and was eventually sentenced to death. Now, how are these characters related to the characters of Animal Farm? We know Tsar Nicholas II. Tsar Nicholas II is represented through the character of Mr. Jones. And Lenin, of course, our old major is a mixture of Lenin and Karl Marx. Now, regarding uh, Stalin and Trotsky. Snobel is Leon Trotsky. Snobel, we know, is very intelligent, a good speaker, very persuasive, visionary, who does things for the welfare of the animals, but was later chased and banished into exile by Napoleon's dogs, one of the leaders of Battle of the Cowshed, one who works according to all majors' ideas. Now look at Trotsky. He is a brilliant speaker and thinker, wanted to improve the welfare of Russian citizens, one of the leaders of October Revolution, chased away by Lenin's secret police. He also agrees with Karl Marx. So, Snobel is an allegorical representation of Leon Trotsky. Now, regarding Napoleon. Napoleon, the one who leads rebellion against Farm Mr. Jones. After the rebellion, how eventually he gains control over the entire farm and he becomes the ruler, he becomes the leader. Napoleon is an allegorical representation of Joseph Stalin, the communist dictator of Soviet Union from 1922 to 1953, and Stalin killed almost all people who opposed him. While he was in power, he used his secret police to enforce rules, to enforce atrocities against all who raised voice against him. Same was done by Napoleon. Instead of the secret police, Napoleon had his dogs. So, this is about the connection between history and literature in Animal Farm. Russian Revolution, the October Revolution, the Battle of the Cowshed and Animal Farm. The leaders, Nicholas II is Mr. Jones, Lenin and Marx. Together we have Old Major. Stalin is Napoleon and Trotsky is Snobel. So, two important things happen in chapter 5. Molly disappears, Snobel is expelled from Animal Farm, and Napoleon becomes the sole leader now. Now, moving on to chapter 6. Yeah. So these are the things that happened in chapter 5, that Napoleon became the entire ruler, the sole ruler of Animal Farm. Meetings were abolished and things quickly changed. Animals grew very scared of Napoleon and his dogs. They were forced to do more work while the pigs had to do much less. They were fed much less, even though pigs seemed to be getting bigger, and the commandments were being changed. So animals, they started working like slaves. They work 60 hours a week, and those animals who, you know, were reluctant to work were given less rations. Even they were work on Sunday afternoons, but the Sunday afternoon works would be voluntary. But any animal who absented himself from Sunday work, Sunday voluntary work, would have his rations reduced by half. And that year also they had their harvest, and the harvest was less successful than in the previous year. And winter, they could see winter was coming, and it is going to be a hard time for the animals. And the animals, they continued their the building of a windmill, which was meted out with many unexpected difficulties. But there was one animal who worked really hard for the building of the windmill, and that was none other than Boxer. Boxer is now living with two mottos: I will work harder, and Napoleon is always right. So Boxer, he wakes up early in the morning. He works much more than all the other animals, and he represents, or he is an allegorical representation of the proletariats. The proletariats is the working class people. He is very strong, a hard worker, loyal, but not enough brain to his brawn. He is not that foolish, but he doesn't have his brain to think. So Boxer is a allegorical representation of the working class or the proletariats. So all the Sunday meetings started ending with Napoleon's slogan, "Long live Animal Farm." And one day, in one of the meetings, he announced the decision to have to engage in trade with human beings. All the animals were actually taken back by this particular decision of Napoleon, as it was earlier said that no animal should engage in trade. I hope you remember that. That was said by all major at the very beginning, that no animal should engage in trade. So the decision was taken by Napoleon that animals would engage in trade, and first it is going to be hay, and then it is going to be eggs. So the needs of the windmill must override everything else, he said. So he was actually making arrangements to sell a stay of hay and a part of the current year's wheat crop. And if more money were needed, it would have to be made up by the sale of eggs, for which there was always a market in Wellington. And when animals they started questioning this, they were actually silenced by the dogs. So then onwards, for all the meetings, Napoleon came with the dogs, who used to threaten the other animals if they questioned anything. And also, another decision was taken that a solicitor named Mr. Wimber would be appointed as an intermediary between Animal Farm and the outside world. So Napoleon ended his speech with his usual cry, "Long live Animal Farm." And after the singing of Beats of England, the animals were dismissed. So soon after the meeting, Squealer made a round of the farm and set the animals' mind at rest. Squealer assured that the resolution against engaging in trade and using money had never been passed or even suggested. It was pure imagination, he said to the animals. But a few animals were still in doubt, but he convinced them that such a resolution was never ever made or written down, that no animal should ever engage in trade. So every morning, Mr. Wimber visited the farm. He is presented as a sly looking man with whiskers. And Mr. Wimber is an allusion to the Westerners who catered to Soviet interests and who helped the spread of Soviet myth. And Mr. Wimper is presented as an opportunist, but at the same time honest, smart, trustworthy, and dependable. Though he was greedy, he was very honest and trustworthy. So there was another remarkable change that is mentioned in chapter 6, that earlier the human beings they were reluctant to call animal farmers animal farm. They used to mention animal farm as manor farm, but now that has changed. Everyone started addressing animal farm as animal farm, and they ceased to pretend that it was called manor farm earlier. Uh, and then again, it was about this time that the pigs suddenly moved into the farmhouse to took up their residence there. Again, the animals they remembered another resolution that was taken, that no animal shall sleep in a house. So, but again, the animals were disturbed when they heard that the pigs not only took their meals in the kitchen, but they also used drawing room as a recreation room, and they also slept in beds. So when they heard this, the only animal who considered it as right was Boxer. He said Napoleon is always right. But the other animals were quite doubtful, especially Clover. So Clover asked Muriel to read the seven commandments once again, and Muriel read the fourth commandment as it was as asked by Clover. And Muriel spelt it out. No animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. Clover had not remembered that the fourth commandment mentioned sheets, but as it was there on the wall, it must have done so. So Squealer, as he was passing this, when Clover was asking Muriel to read the fourth commandment, he said that we pigs now sleep in the beds of the farmhouse. Why not? A bed merely means a place to sleep in. A pile of straw in a stall is a bed properly regarded. The rule was against sheets. So this is how Squealer convinced the other animals. Just look at this. ഇവിടെ no animals shall sleep in bed എന്നായിരുന്നു റൂള്. അവർ അതിൻ്റെ കൂടെ with sheets ആഡ് ചെയ്തു. Now the rule is no animal shall sleep in bed with sheets. So the commandments are being altered according to the needs of the pigs. And again, uh, Napoleon is now addressed as leader by all the other animals. Now, by autumn, the animals were tired, but they were quite happy because they were working for the windmill, and they were quite sure that once the windmill is built, their labor would be much less. But in November came heavy rain and thunder, and this windmill, which they built with too much of hard work and labor, was ruined in a heavy storm in the month of November. So the windmill was in ruin, and Napoleon, the very moment he saw this windmill, he accused Snobble of it. And he even ordered a death sentence for Snobble, and he asked Squealer to talk about this to the other animals. And Snobble, out of sheer malignity, uh, avenged himself for his expulsion, and he ruined the windmill, was something that Squealer said to all the other animals. So again, we see that at the end of chapter uh, 6, Napoleon again exhorts the animals to start working on windmill once again. He asked the animals to work once again so that they will teach a lesson to the traitor. So he exhorts animals once again, saying, long live the windmill and long live the animal farm. So that is how chapter 6 of Animal Farm ends. So I hope things are quite clear to you. You were earlier asked to read both the chapters. So uh, if you need any clarification regarding any characters or any particular incident, feel free to ask. Thank you.